Welcome, Eric, who's dialing in live from Atlantic City, New Jersey, at the Atlantic Palace. Eric is a power mom, Philadelphian, in architecture and design, founder and curator of Parking Day, and many, many other things. She will tell you all about what she does, and I'm going to share my screen to help her with her slides. Yo, enjoy this talk by my friend Eric.
And guess what? We've got Wi-Fi all of a sudden. Yay!
Mom magic.
Can you see the slides, Eric?
I can see the slide.
Everybody, really? But yeah, all right, great. Take it away.
That patience, you learn a lot of that for sure in this. Good morning. My name is Eric. I do respond to Erike, not Erica, depending on, of course, how much I like you, because that has happened before, and I've waited years to let that person know. It's like, oh, by the way, name's not Erica, but you know, I like you too much. So I was really excited when I was asked to, well, I was excited, but first I was more surprised. Matriarchy. And it was really because of this post that Michelle shared with me that this came to be. And this is Designing Motherhood, and this was actually our first outing as a family, kind of post-COVID. And this is at the Mutter Museum in Center City, Philadelphia. Designing Motherhood was one of the last projects I was able to work on before COVID, and we had the stay-at-home order. These are the two little ones that made me a mom. And if you look on the right, there's a whole spiel, and you'll see their names in there. The Maternity Care Coalition was the organization, the nonprofit that ended up receiving funding for this Designing Motherhood project, which was really to showcase the arc of reproduction, the good, bad, the ugly. So when I first heard about this project, I was definitely on board. And I will say, they've shared with me that they consider me the midwife or the doula of this project. And because they were looking for a partner, a nonprofit partner. And this Maternity Care Coalition, the reason why I knew about them was from a few years back doing an architecture survey. I was doing a survey of their space because we were going to put a new daycare. And so, they had 24 hours before the Pew application was needed to be turned in. And they just asked, like, is there anyone? And I just kind of put this in the chat. Was like, here, try these folks. And before you knew it, there was a project. And one thing I loved about this project was I felt seen as a designer and as a mother, because I've had to navigate both this whole time. Let's go over to the next slide. So this is me. Who would have thought I'd be talking to you today? But as far as I can remember, I've felt like, and I'm an older sister to two young brothers. So I've always felt like this maternal engagement, nurturing piece of me has always existed. And, come to find out when I became a mom, it was kind of interesting that, I thought I have an older daughter. I have two daughters. And I thought that maybe, older kid, you'll naturally get it. Like most of my friends who are older siblings are just naturally that have that maternal instinct. No, apparently sometimes it has to be taught and it has to be recognized. And so I think about this time as also, when asked, where are you from? It's the hardest question to ever answer. right now, the longest place I've lived in is Philly. So I guess now I say I'm from Philly. But when previously asked, I always would ask, is it nationality, heritage? Because I was born in Australia, traveled to the Philippines, went back to Australia. There was Germany in there, the US, then finally Texas, Humble, Texas, where you see this. This is how lame I kind of was when I was looking for a nickname for my Letterman jacket, which I lettered. I got my Letterman jacket, my purple Letterman jacket, because of choir, which people in my adult life, I think, don't know that I can actually sing. But here's some proof. And to continue to push the notion of Mama Eric, which was my nickname, and that's what I put on my Letterman jacket. I also ended up taking on, these roles of like the principal in Greece. When we would have our, to the photo on your left is me putting someone's hat on for madrigal singers. When I was in high school, we'd be the carolers, and we would always have a story plot. Usually I was like the wife of the mayor or, some sort of matriarch of the group. And I was a stage manager, assistant stage manager, prop mistress, which kind of led me to being a transplant here in Philadelphia. I went to architecture school with the intent of being a set designer for theater productions. But in the process, finding out more about the profession, I started getting involved like I did when I was in high school. And this here, I call this foremother because, you hear forefather this whole time for most things. But we went out to the American Institute of Architecture students. We went to our conference, their annual conference. And I remember coming back after the New Year saying, we need to bring back Freedom by Design. And Freedom by Design was a program that we did where you put architecture students with real clients and making sure, creating design solutions that brought people dignity. And so in this case, we were building a ramp, and I think there was actually only 2 of us that used this jackhammer. And it was a hands-on experience, and something that I think, thinking about today, that this Freedom by Design became an influence to many students later. But this came with hesitancy when I brought it back. They're like, are you sure we should bring this? I was like, yes, we should. And from there, so that was my college years where I was very involved, to the point that I was told that maybe I should reconsider being in architecture because I was too involved. I was an RA, I was in the theater club. By my 5th year, I was senior class president, if anyone remembers, and if there are any Philly U Jefferson folks on here. The Ram Jam, that was me. That was me. It's still there. And that just started because we were like, okay, class officers, let's do something. But that continued on after college. I did graduate around the recession, so the future was a little unclear and cloudy. I ended up working for the federal government. And really, honestly, when I got that position, I was like, you know what, I have a job, I'm gonna do it. You know what, maybe I'll become the architect of the federal government, because it was the General Services Administration, so they owned all the property. And so to still feel connected with the architecture community, I did Parking Day, was one of them. Got involved with the Center for Architecture and Design, got involved with the American Institute of Architects. Over here is Habitat for Humanity. It was the first day of the Restore opening when it was up on Jasper Street. I came in that day just to, help move stuff around. And they were like, here's the headset. You're gonna do logistics. You got this. Okay, bye. And it was a smooth day. And you know what? I think that was one of the reasons why I really wanted to be in technical theater, which led me to set design, was that rush of like being able to improvise and like quickly solve problems And then we had children, got married, had children, and to the point where I brought her everywhere. And it's interesting. I was on a call a few weeks ago. We were trying to figure out the Young Alumni Achievement Award, and one person said, "It's like, Eric just brought her kid, and it made every event like really, really casual and fun." It took some time for me to respond back to her, but I was like, I kind of had to do that out of necessity. Like, it's not like we had a babysitter around the corner. Probably half the people that I would probably ask to watch her all were at the event. So we just brought her, winning awards, going to events. It was interesting because people kind of always wondered, like, how do you do it? With a lot of strength and patience, that's for sure. But brought her everywhere. Won an award here, won an award there, bring the kid, nurse the kid. The kid was so cute to the point where people would ask when we finally stopped bringing her, it's like, where is she? It's like, are you gonna run around and go get her? Didn't think so. But it was also kind of interesting because when we were with her, we would kind of let her loose. It's at the Center for Architecture and Design that she actually learned how to walk with a cup in her hand. But people would ask and look at me kind of funny because I would just let her run. I was like, the whole place knows who she is. I don't think she's going to escape. It'll be really hard for that to happen. But we also ended up having a second one about 4 years later. Oh, yeah, that was the first one during Fast Forward. Pangalawa was the second. Told you, some unflattering photos. But she was born on Friday. Her birthday is actually on Tuesday. And I had gone from working at an architecture firm for quite a while, small and medium architecture firms, doing communications and doing project work, and then ended up at the Center for Architecture and Design to run Design Philadelphia, which at that point was a position that I never thought that would ever exist and what I wanted. When I was in architecture school, I think what drove me was this philosophy of design needed to be accessible to people, to anyone, to everyone. You can't show up with a lot of jargon if you want to meet people where they are, if you want to make people understand what you do. And it was flexible enough that I could bring the little one, the smallest one, to work. I had a pack and play at the office, sitter on my desk, like you saw. A couple of these, this was during Design Philadelphia, brought her to the festival. The one on the top left, I believe I was going to facilitate a talk, and there was no one to take her. So the person that I had, provided by Woody Gritty, by the way, she loved kids and she was a nanny beforehand. So she was like, I will take baby. Give me baby. You go do you. Bye. But both kiddos have been part of everything that I do and part of almost every process since then of what I want to do professionally. On the top left, I find this as a funny picture. I don't think anyone else does. But if you look really closely in the very center, it's me carrying a little one, a little itty bitty baby the whole time. And when we were at Bach during Design Philadelphia, I remember someone telling me, it's like, you make me feel empowered. I feel empowered, like I could be totally superhuman. And I was like, what are you talking about? It's like, you've got your backpack. I had my huge backpack from Reload, which is a big messenger bag that had everything that I needed, from diapers, burp cloth, extra clothes, and all my Design Philly on-site things. And from tape measure to whatever I would need. And she had my backpack, had baby in front, and I was ready to go. They're like, wow, if you can do this, I can do this. And I was just like, thank you. Felt really good, but I was drenched, so drenched that whole summer. But what's interesting about coming into motherhood is that all of a sudden you become part of like this different demographic slice of life that you didn't know existed. You know, from, I mean, I was a big fan of Pinterest, but it like went up even higher when someone asked you, it's like, Mom, I want unicorn cupcakes, but I have an egg allergy, so you need to also make sure there's no egg in it. Go. So, unicorn cupcakes it is. On Tuesday, I need to make dinosaur ones that are red. So we'll see. I was nursing. I found this last stash when I had my second kid. I was like, wow, I still had this left in my freezer. And I had to take a picture. It's like, why are you taking a picture? It's like, that's me. That's everything of me. Sacrifice, late nights, hoping that you meet all expectations. Ooh. And then at the end of, February last year, still running design filling and doing special projects. I got to be in front of kids. And I remember, it was the year of special projects at the center, and I was able to manage those. And then I wanted to make Design Philadelphia even better. I think the interesting part of becoming a parent, becoming a mother, is that sometimes you don't take enough time to actually reflect on how much you've accomplished. Let's go to the next slide. And COVID happened. At which time there were two full-time parents working, two parents working full-time. And stay-at-home order came in March 13th. I know this week very distinctly because about 4 days in, which we were trying to figure out, like, okay, how do we balance all these meetings, all this work that needs to be done while you have two little people under the age of 7. At that point, a 1.5-year-old and a kindergartner. 4 days into it, I get laid off. First thing that came to mind, though, was relief. Because how do you juggle that? How do you juggle trying to still be active with your kids while they're home with you? Well, I mean, we are very conscious about trying not to be on screens in front of them, but that was so hard to do in the past 15 months. So hard. So I felt relieved and devastated at the same time. I took a few hours. It took a few hours before I finally got devastated and started kind of crying my eyes out because I was like, that was my dream job. That's what I've been working towards. So I ended up doing this kind of school, not school, is what I kind of called it. So if some people follow me on Facebook and stuff, you would see kind of the activities that I did with the kids. After the first week of like, okay, I don't know what to do. I was like, okay, put your big girl pants on. What do you do best? You know how to project manage. Okay, what is there? Thankfully, I also went to design school, so I had all this stuff, which, by the way, creativity is messy. So the cleanup part sucks. Cleanup sucks. But you try. Here's the little one who tried to pretend being like us, like the rest of us. Like, I want to be on my computer. I want to do my work. And still trying to balance that out with learning and fun and still being out in the world. It wasn't until this past year that we got the littlest one to finally wear a mask. And it was because of a superhero song. 3 weeks of a superhero mask song. And then needing to save our reusable bags at the grocery store. And it was heaven. So about a month or so, I tried to figure out, like, what do I do? What do I do now? For right now, I think I'll just take the time. This works out. Someone needs to be with the kids. Then I finally was like, my spouse needed some headshots, so I called Kat Kendon. I think she's on from Kendon Photography. She's on here. This was our day from that photo shoot, and I just kind of found it funny because one of his headshots was this one, but underneath the whole other layer, underneath 4 feet, were these two running, also perked photography. It's always on mute. So you had these two like running, screaming. So I tried to give myself some projects, and that led into quite a few things, actually. I kind of did a brain dump of what do I really want to do? What am I good at? I'm given the time and space to think about this. So I sulked for about a month before I did this brain dump and created this started figuring out this studio for the people and presented it at Fast Forward during Design Philly, which was also an event that I co-founded with a friend of mine. And it was one of those things where I even told her, I was like, I don't need any special treatment. I know I've got history with the event, but please, if I'm not accepted, it's cool. It's totally fine. But for me, it was to put out into the world, at least to me, it was some sort of sense of accountability to share that there needs to be a headspace for people that are not designers. To be able to question and kind of train their creativity and to figure out that they're actually designers at the end of the day. Because if you're a designer on here, you know that kind of like our decree is that we are problem solvers. So isn't anyone? But then also at the end of the school year, let's go back real quick. I was answering surveys for the school district for my kindergartner about the upcoming school year and dealing with COVID and what do we do with this? And so I was writing my answers like, hey, why don't you use the whole schoolyard? Which led to an email to the Community Design Collaborative, which I already volunteered at and was working on a pro bono project. It's like, hey, is there like a project here for doing like outdoor learning spaces? Like I've been answering these surveys. What do you think? And mind you, that was already like on my mind for about 2 weeks before I sent this email. By the end of the week, got a phone call asking, if we can get funding, will you manage it? This project. I'm like, sure. Not even a week later, here, you're managing this project. Do this design competition. You're going to create a design guide. You come up with the whole process. Go. Which was my first kind of project, like, oh, I have work to do now. Cool. And next slide, which then led into also me all of a sudden finding work doing social media coordination for Jefferson's College of Architecture and the Built Environment, which has recently led to me running a summer academy this July. It's just a week long for me to teach, but I am developing this with and having some other faculty doing some of these deep dives. But I was excited to teach this career discovery because, and I said yes to it, although my spouse was like, are you sure you really need to take on more? Like, we didn't really like plan for you to be working as much as you are. And I was like, but this is part of my studio for the non-designer, my studio for the people. So I was just saying yes, because I think one thing I ended up finding out was like, and I'll talk about this in a little bit, is the strengths we have And how we move in this world has some sort of reasoning. I ended up going to grad school too. So I said another yes. Even though I have been told no is a full sentence, it is a complete thought. But having done my brain dump, what was next for me when we kind of made the family decision that I would no longer look for work, yet it found me. I decided to go to grad school, and I'm going to grad school right now. Just finished my first term for design thinking and entrepreneurship at National Louis University in Chicago. And for me, and I'm the first cohort, no pressure, right? And the only one on the East Coast. Again, no pressure. But it seemed like the next good move, because our family conversation was, how do I still make progress? How do I still create and maintain my trajectory as a professional if I'm not going to look for work, which again found me, but it was grad school. And so part of my saying yes was all strategic, of like, eventually this is going to lead into this other project. And if you're also following me on Instagram, you'll see all of these drinks. People have yoga, people have running, people have all that stuff. I have cocktails, to the point that the little one likes to help muddle herbs and make her own mocktails. But I've kind of found solace in this because I get to kind of zone out to make these drinks. Which I got an okay from that at one point, because I was a little bit nervous about sharing this at one point during grad school, but I was partnered up with one of my classmates. She's in her 50s, and she was like, that's totally okay. I'm like, great. I'm glad I have your approval. I'm going to continue to make drinks. But all of this, one thing that I learned during my self-discovery during grad school in the first term, one, I was in a strengths and leadership course and a innovation with empathy course. And it was about this self-discovery of not to work in deficits, but in all your strengths. And what happened during that time, it became really emotional for me, because I came to find out that quite a few of my professional experiences, although all pretty much female-led, all the way down to like when I was 15 as a lifeguard, there were traumatizing moments throughout that time that ended up making me question how much power I had as a person, how assertive I could actually be, because it's constantly in question, especially as a female. Leaving the office and everyone's looking, it's like, oh, she has a kid. Even though sometimes I feel like half the time it was really just you in your head kind of putting yourself down. But I found through the past now 12 weeks that everything I always had intention, and it was meant for something that I've determined and I've designed. And so hopefully, you can see even like my little talk, Matriarchy on this. I hope within the next year, kind of really being able to hone in on that, is to bring to this world this design gym where people get to practice their creativity, where people can feel supported in their design experience. And to know that you are good enough, that you are strong enough, and that hopefully you find the magic dream team one day. So with that, I say it's okay to cry. It's okay to say no. It's okay to say yes. But it's definitely been the one thing that motherhood has taught me, is that each person is different. each person has their own strengths, their own weaknesses, but we don't like to think about the weaknesses. Just stay in strengths. Just stay in strengths. So with that, thank you.
Yay!
Whoa, did not expect to break down like that. Oh my gosh.
You didn't plan that?
No. I try to always keep it together. I try to keep the face. I try to keep the face all the time. I do now since my mom's here. Hi, Mom.
Oh my God. Your mom wrote the sweetest thing in the chat, so you shouldn't read it because you'll probably cry again.
Let's do it. Let's do it. But, you know, no, so my leadership style, you know, sometimes I think we always question what our leadership styles are. I know I kind of picked it up from my mom from watching her. When we were in the Philippines, she was her class president. And there were so many times that I watched her in action that, you know, it wasn't until I was an adult, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm like my mom when I'm in leadership positions where like we're very passionate about things that we get emotional sometimes. I've done it at work before and I'm like, no, don't do it. Keep it together. Take a breath. Don't look away. Look away. No tears. No tears. But, you know, I've to the point where you will fight just because. But I know I picked that up from my mom. And sometimes I have to be like, okay, calm down. You need to calm down. So thanks, Mom. But yeah, that's been the toughest thing, especially in the professional setting. Like I feel like at home you could like, fine, break down. But when you're in a professional setting, it is so hard. It is so hard, especially when you know that, you know, just like, again, which number one, I will say matriarchy, I sometimes find is a really weird word. And I think it's because we don't use it very much. We always hear the patriarchy. And then otherwise we only hear matriarch. So it's like one, it's like, we're a collective of people, whether you know it or not. It's like, you just kind of connect the dots. But I've had all female supervisors and, you know, sometimes you would think there've been some good ones and there've been some like, okay, all right, we're just gonna continue with our heads down, do what we do. But it's hard in the professional setting because, you know, you can't be too emotional, you can't be too vulnerable, you have to stay strong. And sometimes, you know, you get to the point where I'll share this. I took an emotional intelligence test as well as a strengths test. And in my emotional intelligence, apparently assertiveness was one of my lower subscales, which after I was talking to the coach about it, she was like, you're assertive. You're so assertive. Like anytime you're like reframing. I was like, yeah, but when you're in a setting where you're kind of put down the first time, you're kind of like, okay, I'm not going to do it anymore. And you start becoming like a little bit more strategic and, you know, you're managing up. That's so tiring. So like now kind of being able to write my own book, kind of do the plays. I've continued to keep like, there's this mental black book I have of all the people that I've worked with that I'm like, ooh, we could be a dream team. And you just continue the list. You're just like, ooh, I don't know when I'll use you. I don't know when we'll reconnect again, but I know I want to work with you. I'm going to continue doing that. Okay. So hopefully that's what I'm doing, is that, you know, my future means I get to work with the people that I feel strong with, and hopefully I will strengthen them. Guys, don't let me keep talking. Do you have any questions? I mean, I can keep on talking. We can keep on talking. We can keep hanging out. Unfortunately, I don't have my cocktail shaker here, though. So that's a bummer. But
can I just say something?
Yes.
Hi, Jane. Hi, Eric. How are you?
Good.
I want to just say, you know, I'm very proud of you. You know that, but I think the crying, breaking down, and being embarrassed about it and wanting to hide it and not doing that sucks. You know, that is the patriarchy right there. It's the male expectation that you are not to express yourself in your full emotion. And that is problematic. I look at myself when I was your professor, and that's me. And I was a pissed off, angry bitch all the time because I was holding back from expressing myself within my full range of emotion, you know, and that's not you. That's not being fully human. And the thing is like, you should be proud to be that way. You know, you have tears because you did so much in such a long period of time and you took on so much. And that's huge. And you should be, you have the right to the breaking down and, you know, not feeling embarrassed about that. So I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, I feel like now because I'm I'm freelancing and I really kind of don't really have like staff to be around. I'm like, I'm gonna do it. I'm just gonna come over here. I'm just gonna do this, a little bit of that. Okay, I'm good. Ready. So it's been interesting, kind of like, it's also been an interesting road kind of not being employed and kind of coming in and out of other staffs a little bit. And so where you feel like you actually have a little bit more leverage, like, no, I can be myself because I am the expert. I'm coming into this space. I am the expert. Even though you're kind of like, even though in the back of my mind, I'm like, no, maybe you should calm it down, be a little bit more respectful. Just be careful. But you're still like, here's my front. If I'm doing it, if I'm acting it, you know, it's real and it's out there. So thank you, Jane.
Eric, we have a question in the chat.
Yes.
Brooke, if you want to go on, unmute yourself, you can ask Eric directly. Otherwise, we can read the question. Eric, the question is, many of us say yes more than we say no. How do you manage the sense of overwhelm that comes with saying yes to everything? That's the $1 million question, right?
Oh yeah. And you're hit with it every time. It's kind of crazy because I think in one respect we say yes to things because we know they're beneficial to us in some capacity. You know, we know that if we say yes, this somehow is going to affect a future thing. And I think that's something that we don't also talk about. And it's not to say that the way that I've managed it is this way. So I'm even trying to think back in college years, you know, when I had a project due, it was kind of like this whole reshifting and recalibrating of like, okay, what do I do now? What do I do? What can take lower priority? Because I still need to do it. Everything needs to happen at one time. But it was just a matter of like kind of doing a quick prioritization. Like now when I totally feel overwhelmed, and as much as I'm like telling myself like, no, don't do this process because then it's going to take so much time. But I usually kind of like stop, put out in front of me, what do I need? What do I have at high priority? How can I move that around? Like I have found myself, so grad school has been a beast, to say the least. And at week 2, I almost told I told my spouse, I was like, you're making me feel like I need to quit school. And that's so also a little bit back up on there, having a partner, that it is very important to communicate. Communication is so key. Communication is so key. Even when you're arguing and later on figure out that you're actually arguing the same point, you still argue with full force. And then you laugh about it. It's totally fine. Because we have figured that out about our language. And going through grad school and making even that decision was such a big process, to the point where people were asking me, it's like, are you sure you're not just assuming the position? Are you sure you're not just assuming the position? And so as I started saying yes to things, it's just constant reframe, calibrate, execute. And When I do say no, there are some things that I will say yes to without any other counsel. I'll just say yes, find out later. Oops. And when there are, but it's a bigger conversation when I say no. Like I definitely do the first, thank you, let me think on that. I will get back to you as soon as possible. But it's a constant recalibrate, reframe. And I do that on paper. I do that. I have a sauna that I do and try to debate which kind of way I'm going to organize things. But at the end of the day, you also think about like, well, at the end of the day, what is your North Star? What's your North Star? And does it benefit that? That's always key there. Like I will, when I reflected on this, like the fact that my design philosophy, as kind of like general and very ambitious that is, that's what kept me through going through all the different jobs that I did. Or when I said, okay, it's time to go. It's time to go. And by the way, I actually never took a break in between jobs. Like I would resign from one, the next day I'd go to the next one. Resign one and go to the next one. They're like, you want to take a break? I was like, well, there was about to be an important meeting and I get to start the project. Like, yeah. Like I when I resigned one job, my supervisor said, people just leave. I was like, I know there was a set due to be reviewed. I don't know. I think that would be like the most respectful, courteous thing to do. But for him to tell me it's like people just leave, I'm like, yeah, well, I'm not those people. And I started a new job. And in that next job, somehow also carved myself some space to be doing projects while doing communications and marketing for this small architecture firm, which talk about prioritization. Oh, do I do project work that I get paid for? Or do I work on the proposals to get more money? So it was constant like, okay, they're both high priorities, but yet no one gives you any tools to be like, oh, this is how you figure it out. Like, no. So it was always constantly like, what do I do? And that doesn't mean that I ended that at 5:00. So I'll get back to grad school. 2 weeks in, we didn't really have a plan. We're like, we'll figure it out. Worst decision ever. To just like, let's figure it out. But after that, like we talked at the playground, I was like, dude, we need to do something about this. But I find myself doing grad school work late at night till like 4 a.m. I see the sunrise sometimes. And then I go to sleep so that I don't have to do it during the day because I need my focus to be with the kids. But yet somehow I'm okay with like 3 hours of sleep. But when it's nap time, I nap. I nap as well. I'll go for it. But in that second week, I was like, I can't be the student that I want to be in grad school. And that was important to me. That was so important to me. So we figured it out. We figured it out a little bit. But October 2022, I graduate. There's an end.
What do you do, Eric, you do your cocktail making for meditation?
My dad.
I love it. I have like screenshots of your mom and dad from this, by the way, that I'll send to you. You do your cocktail making for meditation. What other like self-care type things? Because it sounds like you're not always sleeping a lot. Do you do for yourself?
What else do I do? Honestly, sometimes it's even the staying up part because I get to like kind of zone out. I don't have to care for anyone else at that point. But as soon as like, sometimes I'll hear it around like 4:30, Mama, I need you. Damn it. I have to go be mom now. But, kind of doing these kind of little vacations, even though it's with them and trying to like stay in the moment, even though it's really tough to do. Like right now, I know there are parents that I need to be emailing back about their kids getting scholarships for architecture camp. I'm like, no, hold off. Like even leading into this like little mini vacation was like, okay, set up posts. My other self-care, buying local. Hello. Yeah, that's what I was kind of doing during the pandemic. I was like buying stuff, buying masks from local people. I was buying mugs from people. Instead of sending it home to me, I sent it to friends. I was like, oh, you would like this. Go ahead. One of my friends, like, she texted me and she was like, this is from you, isn't it? I was like, uh-oh, what do I remember that? And she sent me a scrunchie with matching mask. I was like, yeah, that's me. How do you know? It's local and my favorite and functional. It's like, okay, yeah, that was me. So yes, I tend to do that. So it's cocktails, buying stuff within reason. But yeah, because but always functional, never just to, yeah. If you're gonna buy it local and make sure it's useful and that you'll use it for a long time. Glasses, earrings. I had to invest in that this past pandemic because you only see this. So clothing is really out. So it's like, okay, which pair of glasses? Like I had all my glasses updated. So I have like 6 pairs of Philly Eyeworks, earrings. That was what was happening. Yeah.
And your t-shirt's fire today.
Yeah.
I know people can't see the whole thing. Yeah, there you go.
And this came out of being on a, there you go, folks, a WhatsApp Philly chats, Mama Philly chats. So hashtag Mama Chat Philly. And it is just, and I got connected with it from an industrial designer professor while I was doing design. She's like, oh, I should add you to this. And it's basically it's on WhatsApp, it's on Facebook, or it's on Instagram, like all these mama groups, Mama in Architecture, always it's just a community of people where you don't have to feel embarrassed about like, oh, this is happening to me. Or so my kids were cloth diapered, and for a hot minute I worked at a natural parenting storefront over down in East Passyunk, cloth. And I recall like my friends like being like, oh my gosh, wow, you're so crunchy. I'm like, oh my gosh, there are crunchier than me. I'm not even, like, there's granola. I'm just a mild crunchy. And I remember just like, well, it was partially, save money, partial be good to the environment. It's really actually not that hard. But I remember like just people kind of like, isn't that so expensive? You're so crunchy. Like we did baby-led weaning. I was kind of like one of the first friends in our group of friends that had kids. And everyone was like, oh, we're just watching you first. We're watching you first. I'm like, okay. And then when they're finally in it, they're like, wow, what you're doing. Like, yes, it's a muscle. But lately what it's been is like, you try to integrate like your professional self into your personal self sometimes. And one thing that I learned during grad school is like, it's one and the same. There's not really these two roads that you're one. You're really just this one person. There's not really this half and half this, because you integrate in everything you do. Both hats. But yes, some people even thought it was crunchy. I was like, what? I'm not that crunchy. So I think your question though was self-care. I sleep in once in a while with them. I'm lucky enough to have children that don't wake up early.
I know, I'm shocked that they're not.
Oh, they're not here right now. They slowly
Oh,
escaped. They
okay.
slowly escaped. Slowly escaped.
So we're coming up. We've been time for maybe one question or comment,
Sure.
or final words for this Friday from Eric.
Yeah, from Atlantic City, from the beachfront.
Oh, Janice asks, how does your husband support you?
So that was a big chunk that we didn't quite talk about. I kind of covered just a little bit. We will yell and scream at each other if required, but we know it's all in good faith. And being able to give space to really just express yourself. We were fortunate enough. So part of the reason why we decided that I wouldn't go for a job, he was being offered another job. So he has a job and a half. So we were fortunate enough that I could say, I'm not going to look for work. And a big reason to that was, and we shared this a lot, we went back and forth. It was a few weeks of talk before deciding not to find work. He was like, if I do this also allows me to support whatever dreams you have. Because it's been interesting this whole time, like, we will criticize each other. Okay, quick story. First job, like 2012-ish, I say, I want to go look for another job. Show him my resume. Looks at my resume. I wouldn't hire you for that first. I'm like, what? Who are you? What the? You're supposed to be supportive. Like, what is going on? Come to find out, 2 weeks later, I was pregnant. So that was what that whole mood swing was. When I did the brain dump of what I want to do in the future, if I get to make the roles, I started telling him my idea. It was just fresh brain dump. He goes, well, how are you going to make money? It's like, dude, I just came up with the idea. What do you want from me? Gosh. He's like, well, if I'm going to invest in it. I'm like, okay, I'll get back to you. But it's a lot of talking. It's a lot of communicating. Sometimes it's stealing conversation, on the pillow in between, with children in between you, or trying to we got really good at eye talking too. Just the or the, just the one where excuse me? The what? The looks. Hi, Mommy. Hi, baby. You're back. But it's a lot of talking to each other, and it's also about having lots of hard conversations. And sometimes there's no decision to be made, but you just have to express and share what is going on, to the point that we know. And I think it's also partially to RA training, right? You're taught that you live in a fishbowl. So there's a lot of self-awareness. There's a lot of, okay, it's now your turn to speak. It's now my turn to speak. Here I'm yelling at you because I don't feel like you're hearing me. So it's all supports. At one point, I will say, after I had my first kid, I stopped doing the cooking because I needed to nurse the kid. So it was all him. So now, add to self-care. When I get to cook without children, it's amazing. That's my self-care too. It's those things, and it's those little moments, and also not forgetting to tell each other how much you care for them. But it's the hard stuff. It's the easy stuff. It's the pinch of the butt here and there, those kinds of things to keep things fun. Hi, you want to come here? And then making sure he comes in at points, to the point where we're like, did I really have to say it? Do you want to say hi? Okay. So, but it's moments like that. I think the whole clan's here. There's one.
Hi.
There's the other one.
Everybody should know too, as we're wrapping up, that Eric is on vacation right now. And he did this talk. So if that isn't a testament to we're doing it all.
Like at one point, he goes like, we're gonna be at the beach, right? I'm like, we'll figure it out. I think that's the one thing for sure. I think that's the one thing for sure is like always kind of being on your game of like how can we make it work? But it's also okay to know that things don't work.
Thank you so much, Eric. This is so inspirational and awesome. And I love seeing your mom here. I think we're going to wrap it because we're at time and it's Friday and you helped start us off with tears, emotion,
right,
warm hearts, and inspiration.
And drinks.
And this talk will be recorded so everybody can rewatch it again or share with a friend who couldn't make it. And we will see you next month. And like Justin said earlier,
you know where to find me. I'll answer more questions.
Yeah, exactly. Eric is around and hanging out in Fishtown when she's not in Atlantic City.
Yes. I stay there right now. Right now, I'm still trying to figure out, I'm totally IRL buffering. I'm like trying to figure out like, how do I get back into this whole, be in person thing?
We need to get t-shirts that say still IRL buffering. Stay tuned for the merch.
With a hologram. With a hologram of like.
Exactly.
So, all right. Well,
all right, everybody. Thank you so much. Enjoy your Friday and your weekend. And thanks again, Eric.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eric.
Till next time.